One of the things I can definitely say about being a Bears fan is I have a long history of not just watching that team, but a long history of seeing productive NFL running backs at differing levels, right? You know, when I was very, 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 very young at the tail end of Walter Payton, and then Neil Anderson, other guys over the years talking about Thomas Jones, and then obviously Matt Forte. And then you have the more obscure kind of 1 or 2 off 1,000-yard backs that they've had sprinkled in throughout my lifetime. The Rashaan Salams, the Raymond Harris, remember the Ultra back? Some of you will, most of you will not. James Allen, yeah, he had a 1,000-yard season as a Bear. You talk about Anthony Thomas, you talk about Jordan Howard. The point I'm getting at here is I'm seeing a lot of productive NFL running backs. So I feel like it uniquely positions me when it comes to evaluating the draft as opposed to the quarterback, where I'm used to the traits that don't make quarterbacks successful and call those out. I'm able to point to at the running back position traits that I see that will make quarterbacks or running backs successful at the next level. But what I'm also sensitive to is the recent kind of paradigm shift over the past several years around the running back position and the running back conversation, and what analytics say and what recent draft history says about the devaluation of the position, specifically when it comes to the NFL draft. Now, certainly in recent years, you've had some exceptions to that rule, right? You're talking about Saquon Barkley back in 2018, went second overall. You go back to that 2017 draft, you had Fournette go 4th to the Jags, and McCaffrey went 8th to the Panthers, and the year before that, you had Zeke Elliott go 4th to the Cowboys. So even in recent history, you have examples of running backs going in the top 10, but it's always an interesting debate about, is the positional value so great? Can you wait on these guys? Is it worth it? And you're going to hear that debate in the next several weeks still, and you've been hearing it for a while already about Bijan Robinson, the running back from Texas. And a lot of people pointing to him as being like one of those special types of backs, being one of those guys that is worth taking in the top half of round 1, perhaps even in the top 10. And here's my challenge, is I'm not sure that I see Bijan Robinson on that level. I don't think he's running back 1 in this draft. I think he's a really good prospect. I think he is a first-round talent. But I struggle to see what puts him on that tier, on that level. Because watching his film at Texas in 2022, I don't know if I quite got that. You know what I mean? But let me talk about him a little bit, and then I'll explain what I mean. In terms of his strengths, like he's got a well-rounded game. In terms of his cuts, he's got sudden jump cuts, allowing him to quickly redirect at the line. So he can get off of where he's going very quickly, redirect, and be able to hit that backside hole. He shows the patience that's needed to wait and allow his blocking to set up in front of him. He's not just running up and going dick to ass in terms of his offensive lineman. He flashes an effective spin move in the open field, so when he does get some space, he can spin and create extra space for himself. He's able to combine multiple cuts and moves in a way that can get him open, that can get him additional yards. He runs with almost nearly ideal pad level. He does well to finish his runs pretty consistently. He's not the type of guy that you're gonna make contact with and then he stops. Like, he's gonna be able to not only break tackles, but even in those cases where he doesn't break the tackle, he's still moving forward. He's still picking up extra yards. He's got great hands as a pass catcher. When you talk about the modern NFL, that is incredibly important, especially in a feature back, especially if you're talking about taking a guy like him in round 1, let alone the top half of round 1. He's got enough speed to be a home run threat. I wouldn't call him a burner per se, but he's a big play running back. He is a guy that can hit the big play, which again, when you're talking about a running back and you're thinking about taking him that high, they've got to be able to do that. He's got great contact balance, which allows him to bounce off of arm tackles when somebody tries to tackle him high. And, you know, for as big of a star as Bijan Robinson is, as special of a talent or a prospect that he's purported to be, he still had less than 600 career touches at Texas, so his mileage isn't super high, relatively speaking, as you might expect for a guy with his talents. And some of you might be listening to what I'm saying there and saying, well, that sure sounds like a special back. Yeah, but some of his weaknesses give me some pause here. They really do. because he has a habit of trying to kick the outside run too much, trying to chase that big play instead of sometimes just taking what's available for him. As a pass catcher, his route tree is pretty basic. Mostly the check downs, the flats, basic outs, basic crossing patterns, nothing too extreme there. So he can be a weapon in the passing game, but somewhat limited in terms of the deployment of him in the passing game at this point. Also, when you talk about the passing game, you want a guy that you could trust back there as a pass protector when needed, the ability to pick up the blitz, and sometimes he misses his assignments in pass protection. So there will be plays where he will get his quarterback lit up because he's late to the spot, he misses his responsibility. For a guy that has this much strength and power, I would have liked to have seen him deploy a stiff arm more consistently, more effectively, because that would be another weapon in his arsenal that would allow him to break even more tackles. And also, watching him, he has moments where he goes down too easily when defenders make contact with his feet or his lower body. You would like to see, in terms of that, him be able to keep his balance better. I talked about his great contact balance in terms of getting hit up high, but when it's up down low, it's a little bit different. There's not much physicality, again, talking about him as a pass blocker. He just kind of throws his shoulder into someone. And look, when you think about skills that you want to value in terms of a running back, it's the running game first. It's the abilities as a pass catcher. That pass blocking, it's something you care about, but it better not be first or second in terms of the prioritization, or else you're doing the whole damn thing wrong. Also, sometimes as a runner, he'll miss the bigger hole at the line. So he's not perfect. No prospect is. I don't want to get me wrong there. But when you're talking about Bijan Robinson, and this talk about, you've certainly seen it from some Bears fans floating out there the option of whether or not the Bears would take him at 9. Or even if they traded back in round 1, would they take him? And I'm not just trying to say this from like a Bears fan standpoint, but speaking quickly from a Bears fan standpoint, if there was one organization in the world that has no business taking a running back in the first half of round 1 because they're always going to find a fucking guy at some point in time in the draft, it's the Chicago Bears. Why in the hell would you ever do that? There's an organizational value. If they are drafting a running back for the most part, I will trust and believe in them because they have a documented history of knowing what the hell they're doing when it comes to the running back position. But when you look at Bijan, I don't think he's a special weapon as a pass catcher. I look at him as a runner and I say he's very good, but I don't know if he's as dynamic, explosive, and special and as big of a home run threat as I would want if I'm going to take a guy that high. I think he's a really good prospect. But when you talk about taking a guy that high, I have trouble looking at him and then looking at maybe some other second-tier running backs in this draft class, such as Zach Charbonnet and Tyjae Spears, and saying that he is so vastly above and beyond them that those guys being taken late round 2, early mid-round 3 makes sense, but him being taken here in the top 15 picks or so makes sense. I don't know about that. My NFL comp to him is Dalvin Cook, who was a guy, now granted, coming out of Florida State, Dalvin Cook had some durability concerns and some fumble problems that Robinson doesn't coming out of Texas. But in terms of play style, I see quite a bit of similarity there. So you're saying, well, you wouldn't take him high like that, but Dalvin Cook's a pretty damn good running back. Well, I agree, but he also was able to be found in the second round. Look, if you're a team that's sitting there in the bottom half of round 1, I'm sorry to the folks that say you should never draft a running back in round 1. I think that is stupid. It depends on the circumstance and the situation. It depends on the needs. You draft best player available. Teams fucking don't. Stop that shit. That's dumb. It's one of those dumb draft narratives that needs to die. They do draft for need. They do it all the time. They don't draft best player available. If you're talking about in that draft range, then yeah. I really like Robinson. I just don't think he's running back 1 in this draft. I think he's running back 2. Because I think there's another running back that is more dynamic and more explosive, both as a runner and especially as a pass catcher, as a receiver in this year's draft. If Robinson is taken, somewhere, maybe you say, well, what about if the Eagles take him at pick 10? Okay, maybe that is one exception because you're talking about a championship contending team. They bring in a guy that they know can contribute at a pretty high level from day one. That could make sense. But for some of these other teams, it might be you need to let it go and focus on the depth of this pretty good running back class. Robinson's a really good prospect. I don't want people to come away thinking that I'm crapping on him. I'm not. I'm just saying I didn't see some of the special traits that I expected to see that would back up some of the hype that I've seen about him. He's a first-round talent. I think he's a top 10 to 15 overall talent in this draft. And with the devaluation of the running back class or running back position, that's where I point to that second half of round one, especially once you get past pick 20. At that point in time, he absolutely should be in the consideration for teams if he hasn't already been taken. I presume he probably will be in this draft. This is a good kid I feel pretty confident about, is going to have a nice, productive NFL career, might make some Pro Bowls. But that level of special, I don't know about that.